Yeah, so thank you. My name is Evan Duffield. I'm the founder, lead developer of Dash. Dash means digital cash. It's like taking cash, so you get out your wallet and you have 5s, 10s, 20s. We want to create something where you can hand somebody a digital version of a $5 bill and anywhere on the earth. So it's private, it's fungible, and it's instant and it's digital. And so I'm going to get into how all of that actually works and what kind of problems are involved in trying to solve, to create something like this. One more. So why did I start Dash? Early on in the Bitcoin project, they were really talking about some really low-level concepts of how to create the perfect money. And I really wanted to explore those things, and they involve going into the core protocol, which is a lot of times really difficult to do once you actually have an economy going. And so there's a lot of problems that are in decentralized systems. And one of the main issues is that decentralized systems, we don't know how to scale them. They scale, but as they scale, all of these problems pop up. There's two problems that are just related to cryptographic currencies, and those are fungibility and speed. We want to be able to compete with credit cards. That would be fantastic, but we need confirmations within just a few seconds so that we can do a person-to-person transaction over the phone without using any centralized points. And then we also want it to be fungible, so it's private. When I give you money, you don't have to worry where it came from. And when your grandma gets into cryptographic currency, she doesn't have to worry about being associated with any type of legal activity, right? And then there's three other problems: infrastructure, funding, and governance. And so governance, for example, is usually done from the top. In a decentralized system, we believe it should be done from the bottom. And funding is another issue. Where does the funding come from? We have legal expenses, we have development expenses, we have web servers, and these expenses get larger as the project gets bigger. And so how do you go about fixing these types of issues? The answer is the second tier. And tiered systems are all around us. When you go to school and you have a question, you go to the second tier, which is the management. When you work for the second tier, which is your manager. And then they have tiers above them. There are tiers all throughout our personal peer-to-peer systems. And so we're replicating that in our network. Essentially what happens is we offer compensation, and then somebody can become an employee of the network voluntarily, and then they get paid for running infrastructure for us. And it pays all of the costs of the infrastructure. And then they can make decisions on behalf of the network, so that they get voting powers. They become a giant panel. And we measure how they feel about things and then determine the direction the network should go and what should be funded at any given time. So speed, how do we fix speed? If you take this second tier, you can actually propagate transactions through it, and you can select a few deterministic nodes, and they will form a panel as a decentralized oracle to lock a transaction in place so it can't be double spent. So we get transaction confirmation of this within just a few seconds. And then in a few minutes later, that transaction is accepted into the blockchain. Governance. How do we do governance? As a member of the second tier, you have one vote. And we submit proposals to the network itself, and then those proposals are voted on. So we have thousands of people, and using wisdom of the crowd, because these people are invested in the currency themselves, we can actually measure the opinion of our network and go specific directions. And then funding. They can also allocate funds for specific tasks. So this group of people as a whole has 10% of the mining reward that they can utilize for paying for things like legal expenses, for paying for people to go speak at events like this one, and things like that. So as the project gets bigger, we have something like seed funding from a regular corporation. And so we're calling this the virtual corporation. It's the idea that you take all of the best parts of a centralized corporation, and then you take all of the best parts of decentralized systems, you marry them together. And then instead of managing it top down, you manage it bottom up. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I love your opinion on the governance. As I see it right now, you assume that the wisdom of the crowd results in the best decision for the crowd. So the crowd knows. So your hypothesis is that democracy works.
Yeah.
How did you validate?
Okay, so I can elaborate on that a little bit. To become a part of the second tier, you actually need to have collateral. And so it costs 1,000 dash. So you have 1,000 dash, you get some equipment, and then by setting up a configuration, you actually run a service on the network. And so you're invested, you have skin in the game. And since you have skin in the game, you have thousands of dollars at risk, you're obviously interested in the best thing for the currency, and you're probably paying attention to it pretty well. So if you take thousands of people in that situation, and then you ask them a question, then you'll probably get a pretty good answer on average.
Can you elaborate more on how these transactions are added to the blockchain?
Sure. So as transactions propagate through the network, there's decentralized oracles, which is, it's a quorum. And what happens, you take the proof of work hash, and then you find the 10 closest second tier members, and then they evaluate that transaction and they rule whether it's valid or not valid. If it's valid, then they can form a transaction lock, which means the inputs can only be spent to where you said that they would be spent to. It's essentially a promise on our network. And so as transactions are added to the blockchain, like when you did that, you added it to the memory pool. So now it's in line to get into the blockchain. Nothing else can be added to a block other than the transaction that you said. And so we go around and we force the miners to do what the second tier says that was the appropriate solution to what happened with your transaction.
You forked from Bitcoin. Why did you create new fork?
Because all of these technologies had to be layered on top of a cryptographic currency, and we're actually splitting the mining rewards, so we needed a brand new blockchain to do that. We needed a decentralized funding source to fund the infrastructure and to fund governance and funding and things like that. So it just wasn't possible to build it on top of Bitcoin.
How are you doing with the business?
It's fantastic. We've actually been running the funding mechanism for about 2 months, and it's paying core salaries now. It's paying for marketing expenses. It's essentially seed funding for our virtual corporation, and we're expanding, and it's doing pretty well.
How do you become a second tier on the network?
All you have to do is you buy 1,000 dash, or you have 1,000 dash, and then you set up a server, and then you just configure it, and it propagates messages across the network saying, hey, I'm part of the second tier, and then all is done automatically after that.
So it's based on stake then. You can buy your dark in, and then you can become a master.
Dash, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
So a masternode, right?
Yes, a masternode.
What's the critical change for 1,000 dash?
About €2,000.
So how many coins have been distributed already, and how many will be
It's about 5.8 million of somewhere between 14 million and like 16 million.
Why was the first load of coins created by the owner and directly paid out to him?
I'm the founder, and so what happened in the beginning was I was working a full-time job, and this was just a hobby, and I decided to see if I could make a solution to fungibility in my spare time. I coded it up in a weekend, and I was really excited, and I pushed it out, and it kind of exploded and released a bunch of coins in a period of about 24 hours. It was 1.9 million of the current 5.8 million coins, so about 1/3, and then after that they were distributed, and then everything's been great since then. I'm really happy that it actually survived that. It's pretty amazing. And then I took a leap of faith. I quit my job, and I've been doing this ever since.
So there's 1.9 million dash are currently exchangeable for 3.8 million euros.
Was that?
5 million for each?
Is that correct? Yeah, but the 1.9 that you made on the first day.
Oh, I didn't mind 1.9 million.
Sorry, so totally, so that's 5 point something right now? Huh?
I can't barely hear you. What was that?
So how much dash are around now? And so basically, according to what will be the total valuation then? So that
Oh,
five
about-
dashes.
Yeah, so
approximately
it's
10 million
yeah,
euros.
it's 5.8 million dash in circulation, and they're trading about like 250 or something, so it's about a $14 million valuation.
So how much is traded on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Anywhere, currently it's about $50,000 worth a day. We've seen upwards of about $1 million a day.
How many transactions per project we can go per second?
About the same as Bitcoin currently, but as the network gets popular, we actually don't have the same infrastructure problems. So we could scale up the infrastructure and actually support a much larger load of transactions on the network.
Because easier.
Probably not. Probably about maybe 20 to 50 times the size of Bitcoin. So upwards of maybe 100 transactions a second currently. And then our next iteration can actually do a lot more than that.
I think it would be the last question. Save the rest for drink.
What kind of products can you buy with Dash? Can you buy your electricity bill, pay your electricity bill with it? Or?
We're just getting to the point where all of the technology works, and we're just starting to go out and talk about it. So there's not a whole lot that you can do with it right now, and we're adding things constantly. There's lots of online shops and things like that where you can buy stuff from, but nothing at the size of like Bitcoin yet.
Well, thanks a lot, Evan, and I hope that you are around to watch the